Now, as a kid who mainly grew up in the 80s, I can't help but feel like I lived through some type of golden age of entertainment, one with amazing movies that I watched over and over again on VHS, like the original Star Wars trilogy or the first three Indiana Jones movies. I even liked Willow, that other Lucasfilm movie from back in the day. Then there were things like the birth of the original Nintendo Entertainment System and playing countless hours of Super Mario Bros., or watching cartoons, playing with and begging my parents for some of the best toys of all time, like Transformers. I also, and though they didn't originate in the 80s, I loved reading Marvel comic books, and I even read The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings trilogy for the very first time during those days. And for some reason, I'm almost getting this sense of something like deja vu right now, as if all the things I watched, experienced, and loved as a child some 30 to 40 years ago just keep coming back over and over again, as if, at least my perceived golden age of entertainment, and I may be a bit biased, it's as if it's seen as a gold mine waiting to be tapped for all it's worth by the companies who own these properties today. As if they're either incapable or unwilling to create new and original entertainment because they've long since realized creating something brand new that people will like and care about is really hard and comes with risk. And believe me, I do understand there is a risk in dumping tens if not hundreds of millions of dollars into something completely new and unproven. That it's just easier and safer and likely to be far more profitable to make another, say, Indiana Jones or Star Wars movie, or to do Batman or Spider-Man for the 20th time, than it is to create the next film or film franchise that even comes close to matching the levels of success and or popularity they have. These companies know it's much, much easier to create something that already has a massive fan base in place, backed by the power of nostalgia, the power of millions of people wanting to love it going into it, that actually then only needs to be good enough to appease and keep many of those fans on the line and considering themselves as fans and thus willing to keep watching and paying for more, than it is to make something completely new that has to be great enough to truly hook people who have never heard of it. Basically, it's just easier to keep someone around by giving them just enough of something, especially when they have a predisposition, you could say, to like or want to like what you're giving them because they're fans, than it is to make something original that's fantastic and brings someone in and makes them want more. And for better or worse, the goal is almost always to make them want more, to turn everything into a franchise these days with sequel potential and spin-offs and so on. And that's for the same reason these older franchises are used over and over again, and sometimes in little more than name considering how much they have changed. And that's because, again, the goal is to create something that has an automatic or guaranteed audience to take advantage of. It's to create a brand, not to tell a story. Rarely are standalone, one-time stories that aren't meant to spawn something else or to last for multiple seasons created these days because there is no long-term profitability in just telling one good story when it can be used to springboard to more. Nor is it good or smart business to let a franchise simply be or let it rest, to leave that gold mine of nostalgia untapped, with something like Indiana Jones being a good example here. I mean, what do you think the main goal of the new movie ultimately is? To give a proper end to the character of Indiana Jones because the actor who plays him, Harrison Ford of course, is now 80 years old and more than likely won't be able to reprise the role and fans want to have at least one more good adventure with him? Or is it because they want to somehow keep the franchise name alive by having him pass on the torch to another? Which isn't to say, in theory, you can't do both, that you can't give a good send-off to Indy and pass on the torch at the same time, letting go of the fact that they tried that already with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I'm not saying here that Dial of Destiny is going to be a bad movie or that all remakes or sequels are bad. Certainly there are some that are fantastic, and I truly hope that Dial of Destiny is going to end up being one of them. I, admittedly, do sort of fall into that category of a fan who has a predisposition to want to like something I love. Go figure. But for me at least, and you can certainly feel differently, I've never thought of Indiana Jones as a franchise per se. Rather, he's simply a character. I mean, you can't have the Indiana Jones franchise without the Indiana Jones. It doesn't or can't exist without him. It's not like Star Wars where a big part of the draw or appeal is the galaxy itself and all the lore that goes along with it. You can plug different characters into different settings in that galaxy and still have it be Star Wars. But someone else running around and doing the same types of things that Indy did in our world's past would just be someone else running around doing the types of things Indy did in our world's past. It'd be something else in the same or similar vein, but it wouldn't be Indiana Jones. And sure, in theory, you could go the solo route with the franchise and replace him with a younger actor and give us new adventures from his youth, and something like The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles was actually quite good. But in my opinion, again, you can feel differently, even something like that would just be them holding onto the name for the sake of holding onto the name and trying to guarantee at least some type of audience with something that's essentially new in everything but the name. It would just be nostalgia bait instead of potentially them creating something truly new and original that could end up being the next Indiana Jones type character in terms of popularity that the kids of today can then complain about being exploited and used as nostalgia bait some 30 years from now. Which sort of brings us to the question, is this something worth getting upset about? Is this really that important? Does Indiana Jones really matter? And well, if the answer wasn't yes to at least some degree, I don't think the discussion would exist in the first place. If these old franchises weren't important to people, they wouldn't be used today to get you into theaters or to make you pay for a streaming service. And it's not because people refuse to grow up or let go of childish things. I see this said all the time, that adults who complain about things like Star Wars or care too much about Indiana Jones, that they need to grow up already. But it's not that they won't grow up or face reality or want to hide from it. Instead, it's because they've long since faced it and realized there is no going back. You don't get to be a kid again. You'll never again feel exactly the way you did back then, when for many, life still felt full of hope and wonder and like a game you'd eventually win. But what you wouldn't give to feel that way, even for a brief moment one more time. What you wouldn't do to be a kid again, seeing Star Wars for the first time, or watching Indiana Jones crack his whip for the first time, or rescuing the princess in Super Mario Bros. Only to be told she's in another castle. Simply put, there is no currency more valuable than time, but its true worth can only be appreciated by those who have the least amount of it left. And for many of us who grew up with some of these amazing characters and stories in the 80s, well, there are more days behind us than there are ahead of us. But what price we wouldn't pay for the chance to recapture that magic. And certainly the measly price of a movie ticket or a month of streaming service is worth the chance, which is literally what they're banking on with nostalgia bait. Well, that's all I've got for this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about nostalgia bait, and what are your hopes and fears for the upcoming Indiana Jones movie. Whatever the case may be, you know what to do. Leave your comments below and let's talk some Star Wars or some Indiana Jones or whatever else it might be. And until next time, thanks for watching.